The auction block dominated the dusty main street of Dusthaven, a frontier town where law was as thin as the morning mist, and justice often came from the barrel of a gun. What was up for sale wasn't horses or mining claims. It was Sister Elena, bound in heavy chains, her once pristine black habit ripped and caked with the grime of the trail. Men hollered bids as if she were no more than a prize heifer, their voices coarse and greedy under the relentless sun. Elijah Kane lounged against the weathered post of the saloon, nursing a glass of rye that scorched his insides but did little to numb the disgust rising in his gut. With 28 notches on his belt from duels that had left better men cold, he'd seen plenty of ugliness in his 35 years, but this spectacle twisted something deep within him that bullets had never touched. The auctioneer, a burly man named Harlan Brooks with a belly that strained his suspenders and a mustache waxed too. Sharp points seized Elena's arm and yanked her forward for the crowd's inspection. "Behold this fine specimen, gentlemen, straight from the abbey, untouched and holy as the driven snow. What'll you give for a woman trained in obedience and virtue?" Elena's gaze swept the throng, landing on Elijah's across the way. No sobs escaped her, no desperate pleas, just a serene composure that seemed out of place amid the leers and catcalls. Her mouth formed silent words, perhaps a prayer to her God, but her eyes held a spark of defiance that pierced through Elijah's haze of liquor and apathy like a knife through fog. Elijah shifted, his fingers brushing the pearl-handled revolver at his side. He'd vowed long ago to abandon the hero's path. It led only to graves filled with fools who believed they could fix the world's rot. Yet, the way she held herself, unbowed and resolute, stirred echoes of a memory he'd buried deep. A young woman from his past, pleading for salvation he couldn't provide. $60, bellowed a miner with coal-blackened hands and a grin missing teeth. 80, countered a cattle baron, his eyes gleaming with unholy hunger. Harlan's laughter boomed, echoing off the false fronts of the buildings. "That's the spirit, boys. This one's been schooled in the ways of the Lord, knows her place, follows commands without a fuss." Elijah's fist tightened around his glass, the rye no longer a comfort, but a spark to the fury igniting in his veins. He'd ended lives for far less than the degradation unfolding before him. The bid surged ninety, then 110. Sister Elena's hand clutched the simple silver crucifix dangling from her neck, her lips whispering fervently, still faithful, still clinging to divine mercy in a den of wolves. It was that unyielding belief that tipped the scales for Elijah. He pushed off the post, boots thudding against the packed earth as he strode into the fray. The crowd parted instinctively, whispers rippling like wind through prairie grass. His name carried weight in these parts. Elijah Kane, the man who'd outdrawn death itself more times than most could count. 300, Elijah announced, his tone slicing the air like a whip crack. Silence descended, heavy and charged. Harlan's eyes bulged, not just at the summino to buy a homestead outright, but at the recognition dawning on his face. The assembly shifted uneasily, creating a bubble of space around Elijah as if he exuded peril. But before the gavel could fall, a smooth, venomous voice interjected from the shadows of an ornate buggy parked at the street's edge. 600, the speaker emerged, Victor Hargrove, clad in a tailored vest embroidered with silver thread, his smile revealing ivory teeth capped in platinum rumored to be fashioned from the fillings of men he'd dispatched. Hargrove controlled vast swaths of land through intimidation and worse, his empire built on rustled herds and silenced witnesses. Elijah's blood ran cold. Of all the devils to crawl from the woodwork, it had to be Hargrove, the very fiend who'd torched the orphanage in Ridgefield, after its caretaker dared to harbor runaway workers from his mines. "Well, if it isn't Elijah Kane, fancying himself a knight in dusty boots," Hargrove drawled, twirling a walking stick topped with a wolf's head carved from obsidian. "How quaint!" Elena's eyes flicked between them, and for the first time, a shadow of alarm crossed her features. She might not know Hargrove's legend by rote, but innocence has an innate sense for malice, like a lamb scenting a predator on the wind. Elijah advanced, his palm hovering near his holster. "This woman's no commodity for your kind, Hargrove. Everything has a price, Gunslinger." Hargrove retorted, his voice oily and assured. Shadows stirred as Hargrove's enforcersive and hardened mercenaries paid in gold. and promises of impunity materialized from alleys and rooftops. The crowd retreated further, the air thickening with the promise of bloodshed. Harlan glanced nervously between the titans, his bravado wilting. 700, Hargrove upped, his stare locked on Elijah like a hawk on prey. Elijah patted his coin purse barely for 100 to his name from a recent bounty in Wyoming. Against Hargrove's fortunes, it was pebbles against boulders. But then Elena's voice broke the standoff, soft yet resonant. "Please," she murmured, the word carrying over the hushed street like a plea from on high. "Don't let him claim me." Those simple syllables struck Elijah like a gut punch, evoking another voice from years gone, a sister begging for aid he'd failed to deliver. He drew his revolver in a fluid arc, leveling it at Harlan's glistening brow. Sales concluded. Hargrove's chuckle reverberated, dark and mocking. "Stealing my purchase in broad daylight, Cain? Bold, even for you. Your town." Elijah shot back, steady as granite. "Last I heard, this was still the United States." "Not in my domain," Hargrove hissed, signaling sharply. His men unleashed a barrage, bullets chewing into the earth as Elijah lunged behind a barrel stack. Elena's chains clinked as she crouched low on the platform, her breath sharp amid the din. "Take him breathing," Hargrove bellowed. "I want him to witness what awaits his holy prize." Elijah peered out, assessing, for assailants closing from the saloon side. To flanking via the mercantile, one circling wide. Outgunned and pinned, retreat tempted him. Stables lay 50 paces distant, offering horses and escape. But abandoning Elena? Unthinkable now. A slug splintered wood inches from his head, showering him with shards. Then, improbably, Elena began to humor him. "How great thou art!" Her melody rising pure and unwavering above the chaos. The gunfire faltered, then ceased, as if the killers' consciences, frayed though they were, recoiled from profaning such sanctity. Seizing the lull, Elijah bolted for the block, squeezing off for rounds. One thug crumpled, clutching his knee. Another scrambled for cover. Reaching Elena, he froze as Harlan jammed a derringer against her temple, chains rattling. One twitch, Cain, and her brains decorate the dirt. Elena's song trailed off, but her gaze on Elijah held no reproachingly quiet resolve. "Wise move," Hargrove taunted, sauntering nearer. "Drop the iron, and perhaps we negotiate like gentlemen." Sweat beaded on Elijah's neck, every fiber urged defiance. But the pistol at Elena's head demanded caution. He'd lost one innocent to rashness before his kin, consumed by flames while he chased vengeance elsewhere. Meeting Elena's eyes, he saw inexplicable faith in him, a stranger. Slowly, he set his revolver down, kicking it aside. "Splendid," Hargrove purred. "Now on your knees." But Elijah's lips curled faintly, not in defeat, but calculation. Harlan trembled visibly, his grip slick on the trigger-happy derringer. "You assume that's my only piece," Elijah whispered. Hargrove's poise wavered. "Pat him down," before hands could reach. Elena acted. She wrenched Harlan's arm and sank her teeth into his wrist, drawing blood and a yelp. The derringer discharged skyward, harmless. As Harlan reeled, Elijah whipped a concealed dagger from his boot, hurling it true into the auctioneer's throat. Harlan collapsed in a heap. Pandemonium reignited. Hargrove's crew fired wildly as Elijah hauled Elena toward the feed store, projectiles shattering windows around them. Inside, Elena slumped against shelves stocked with sacks of grain, chest heaving. Her habit bore fresh stains, but her expression burned with newfound fire. "Why risk everything for me?" she panted. Elijah reloaded hastily, peeking through cracks. 5 bullets remained, not enough for the siege outside. "No soul merits Hargrove's torments, but I'm a stranger. I might be unworthy." Elena stared at her shaking palms. "I believed myself devoted to peace, shielded from sin. Yet when I attacked that man, when I aided in his end, I felt a rush I've never known." What rush? Vindication. The confession lingered, heavy as gun smoke. Boots thudded on the porch. Hargrove's forces encircling. Elijah studied her. The placid nun from the block had evolved, edges sharpening. "Ruit," she paused, absorbing the encroaching threats. "My vows demand repentance for reveling in harm." Her eyes met his. "But I don't." "Does that damn me? It makes you alive. Is that your story? Did life force you to pick survival over sanctity?" The query probed wounds Elijah thought scarred over his sister, Amelia, entrusted to a minister who swore protection, only for raiders to raise everything. He'd arrived to ruins, vowing never to fail again. If you were Elijah, would you reveal your haunted history, potentially shattering her remaining piety, or shield her with falsehoods? The door rattled under assault. Sometimes, he said at last, the Almighty aids those who act. The entrance burst open. Hargrove silhouetted with a double-barreled scattergun. Game's up, Cain. You and your saint march out. Elijah shielded Elena, gauging the gap too wide for a charge, too narrow for evasion. Amusing, isn't it? I sought provisions, not this drama. But seeing you play Redeemer, I relish depriving heroes of their illusions. Elena advanced boldly. If I'm the prize, take me. Spare him, charming, but no. Your companion here dispatched four of my scouts in Blackridge over them executing deserters from my payroll. Elijah sensed Elena's scrutiny. He hadn't confessed Blackridge, witnessing the executions, hearing pleas, pulling triggers without remorse. True, she murmured. They earned it, he affirmed, fixed on Hargrove. Those were innocents. I ended threats. But Elena's touch on his sleeve was gentle. That's not your sole legacy, Hargrove sneered. Enough sentiment. Kneel. Then, the rear door groaned, an aged voice booming. Victor Hargrove. Vacate my premises now. All pivoted to behold Abigail Fletcher, the store's proprietor, wielding a vintage Henry repeater, her silver hair tied back, face etched by decades of hardship. Abigail, Hargrove groaned. This ain't your quarrel, balderdash. This is my establishmento, bloodshed under my roof. Her tone brooked no argument. Forged in frontier trials. Moreover, that woman's garb marks her from Our Lady of Mercy. Sister Maria Elena. Yes, Elena blanched. You recognize me, knew your kin, dear. Louisa Ramirez birthed you here amid a dust storm 28 years past. Prayed you'd heed a higher call. Hargrove's trigger finger twitched. Poignant, but irrelevant. Irrelevant, my foot. She's sheltered here now. The tension coiled tight. 3 firearms, 3 souls scarred by loss. 1 spark from catastrophe. Yet unknown to all, Elena's true identity wasn't Maria Elena. And the revelation brewing would upend the board. Elena paled further. Mrs. Fletcher, you're mistaken. Abigail squinted. No error, child. Your mother's gaze, your father's jawline. Louisa wed that scoundrel Javier Morales against counsel. Elijah watched Elena quiver, disclosures landing like lashes. My guardians perished young. The order nurtured me. They fed you comforts, Abigail pressed. Your father fled after a rigged poker game. Your mother succumbed birthing your sibling. The room fell tomb silent, Hargrove's weapon dipping slightly. Sibling, Elena echoed faintly. Diego more or less swift as lightning, cruel when liquored. Leads outlaws now, dubbed Lightning Diego. Elijah's gut nodded. Lightning Diego, infamous across borders, slayer of sheriffs and bankers alike. Elena slid down the wall, overwhelmed. No, I vowed non-violence, sought redemption daily. While your kin sows chaos, Hargrove interjected. Intrigued. Sister Maria Elena, kin to Diego Morales? This alters the game. Abigail edged nearer, rifle firm. Alters zilch, Victor. Blood don't dictate deeds. Isn't it so? Hargrove's grin turned feral. Diego hit my gold convoy weeks back, slew 7 escorts. But he spared 1 to relay. Inform Hargrove this avenges my sister. Elijah pieced it. The auction allure, Elena bait for her brother. You orchestrated her capture, he accused. Bait indeed. Digo'd Stormin for kin. Instead, you bit. Elena's tone hollowed. He believes me imperiled by him. He's en route. Oh, he's arrived. Hargrove gestured windowward. Perched in the saloon attic, scope likely on us. Hooves thundered of ferreters charging. Abigail muttered oaths. Diego and his crew. Heaven preserve. Elijah tallied rounds. 3 left against multiplying foes. Elena rose, resolve stealing. I'll confront them. Madness. Elijah gripped her. He's my flesh. Perhaps I can salvage his soul. No soul lingers in Diego, Abigail warned. Just wrath, Elena shrugged free. I must attempt. Too much death on my ledger. Outside, Diego's shout pierced. Hargrove. Release her, or perish swiftly. Elena seized Elijah's discarded revolver. handling it with eerie proficiency. "Sister," Abigail breathed. "How'd you master that?" Elena's smile saddened. "Some legacies persist despite devotion," she eyed Elijah. "Diego schooled me at 10. Pre-vows, pre-cleansing our lineage. Time's up," Diego roared. Elena advanced, Elijah realizing his rescuee was transforming irrevocably. Elena stepped onto the sun-baked street of Dusthaven, the revolver feeling unnaturally familiar in her grip, like a long-forgotten sin resurfacing. The torn edges of her habit fluttered in the hot breeze, but her posture was that of a frontier survivor now, not the cloistered devotee who'd been dragged to the auction block mere hours before. Across the way, Diego Morales and his four remaining outlaws sat astride their mounts, dust swirling around hooves stamped impatiently. Diego lowered his kerchief, exposing a visage that mirrored Elena's high cheekbones and dark hair, but twisted by a life of hardship and hate into something feral and unforgiving. Scars crisscrossed his jaw, souvenirs from knife fights and barroom brawls, and his iced host same deep brown as hers held no warmth, only the cold calculation of a man who'd buried his conscience under layers of betrayal and blood. "Katie," Diego called, using the diminutive from their shared childhood, his voice roughened by whiskey and tobacco. "Look at you, all dressed up like some saint. What have these bastards done to twist you?" Elena halted midway, the Colt steady at her side, her heart pounding not just from fear but from the flood of memories. Stolen moments in a ramshackle cabin where a boy had taught his little sister to load and aim, promising to protect her from their father's rages. "They've shown me truths I've hidden from, Diego. Truths about us, about what runs in our veins." Diego's hand hovered near his own sidearm, a custom-engraved peacemaker that had claimed more lives than most men saw in a lifetime. "You're my blood, Katie. That's the only truth that counts." Mount up, we're riding out, family together again. The outlaws shifted in their saddles, fingers itching on triggers, while behind Elena, Elijah emerged from the feed store, his own weapon drawn low, flanked by Abigail with her Henry repeater cocked and ready. Hargrove lurked in the doorway, his scattergun poised, his platinum-capped teeth glinting as he weighed the odds of this family reunion, turning to his advantage. The street had cleared of civilians, shopkeepers peered from behind shutters, knowing Dusthaven's history of turning disputes into massacres. Elena's voice rang clear, cutting through the tension like a church bell in a storm. "No, Diego, I'm not fleeing with you. Not into more shadows, more graves. We've spilled enough blood. Our parents' legacy doesn't have to chain us." Diego's laugh was bitter, echoing off the adobe walls. "Legacy. Pa taught us survival means taking what's yours, by force if needed. You ran to those nuns, pretending piety could erase our name. But look at you now, gun in hand. You're a Morales through and through." His words stung, forcing Elena to confront the duality within, the sister who'd recited Vespers at dawn, seeking absolution, versus the girl who'd once cheered as her brother outshot targets in the arroyo. Was violence innate, a curse passed down like eye color, or a choice forged in the fires of circumstance? Elijah tensed, ready to intervene. But this was Elena's crossroads, a moral quandary that could shatter her faith or redefine it. One of Diego's men, a lanky rider with a scarred lip named Rafe, spat tobacco juice into the dirt. "Boss, we ain't got time for chit-chat. Hargrove's got reinforcements comin'. Let us grab the girl and light out." Diego silenced him with a glare, then fixed on Elena. "You forget what Hargrove did. He ran Pa out, left Ma to die alone in labor. I swore vengeance for us both. This raid, it's for you, Katie." To settle scores, Elena's grip tightened on the revolver, the metal warm against her palm. "Vengeance. You've become the monster you hated, Diego. Killing innocents, robbing stage show. Does that honor Ma's memory? She wanted peace for us, not this endless cycle." The debate hung heavy, a philosophical clash amid the threat of lead. Is justice personal retribution, or does it demand restraint, even forgiveness? Diego's face darkened, the internal war evident, love for his sister warring with the outlaw code that had kept him alive. "Peace. In this world. Hargrove owns the law here, twists it to his whims. Without men like me fighting back, the weak get crushed. You're weak now, hiding behind prayers." Elena raised the Colt slightly, not in threat but emphasis. "Strength isn't in the gun, brother. It's in choosing not to fire when you could. Come in peaceful, I face the marshal, atone. We can rebuild as family, without the shadows. Hargrove chuckled from the doorway, unable to resist stoking the flames. Touching, truly. But your brother's right about one thing. Sister, this land rewards the ruthless. Why do you think I thrive? Mercy is for fools, Abigail snorted, her rifle unwavering. And yet here we stand, victor, holding you at bay. Maybe mercy has teeth when backed by resolve. Elijah edged closer to Elena, whispering. He's stalling. His men are circling from the alleys. Indeed, shadows moved at the peripheries. Hargrove's remaining thugs positioning for a crossfire. The situation teetered on a knife's edge. Multiple factions with grudges old and new. Each decision a potential spark to all-out war. Diego drew then, his draw a blur honed by years on the run. The peacemaker clearing leather in a heartbeat. But Elena, drawing on instincts buried under layers of convent discipline, was quicker. Her shot cracked, the bullet grazing Diego's holster and sending his weapon flying into the dust. A gash opening on his thigh. He staggered back, shock etching his features as blood soaked his chaps. Katie, you fired on me. The outlaws raised rifles. But Elijah and Abigail opened up. Elijah's precise shots felled Rafe from his horse. A clean hit to the shoulder that sent him sprawling. Abigail's repeater barked twice, dropping another rider who clutched his arm and wheeled his mount in retreat. Chaos erupted. Bullets whizzed, splintering wood from hitching posts and pocking the ground. Elena dove behind a water trough, her habit tangling as she returned fire. Her second shot winging a third outlaw's head off his head, forcing him to gallop for cover. Diego, limping, retrieved his gun with his offhand, fury overriding pain. Traitor, after all I've done for you. But Elena's tears mixed with determination. She'd wounded kin to prevent more death, a choice that blurred lines between sin and salvation. Was this self-defense, or had she embraced the violence she'd renounced? The moral ambiguity gnawed at her even as she reloaded with trembling fingers. Hargrove seized the melee, blasting his scattergun toward the outlaws. Buckshot peppering a horse and sending it rearing. Now's our chance. Finish them. His men poured from hiding, turning the street into a battlefield. Elijah pulled Elena deeper into cover, his own revolver barking to keep heads down. We can't hold Harifal back to the livery, Abigail provided, suppressing fire. Her Henry cycling rounds with the efficiency of a woman who'd defended her homestead against Comanche raids in her youth. But Diego, undeterred, charged forward on foot, firing wildly. Katie, this ain't over. You're coming with me. A bullet grazed Elena's arm, tearing fabric and drawing blood a superficial wound. But the pain sharpened her resolve. She stood, aiming true. Stop, Diego, or the next one's not a warning. He halted, chest heaving, the realization dawning that his sister was no longer the vulnerable girl he'd sworn to shield. The outlaws, seeing their leader falter, and to comrades down, broke ranks in fleeing outright, the last surrendering his weapon to Abigail's command. Hargrove's forces pressed, but Elijah flanked them, dropping one with a knee shot and forcing another to ground. In the lull, as dust settled and moans of the wounded filled the air, Diego lowered his gun, defeat in his eyes for the first time. Why, Katie? I was saving you. You were dragging me into hell, she replied, voice steady despite the ache in her soul. Salvation isn't in revenge, it's in breaking the chain. Marshal Thorne, summoned by the initial gunfire, rode in with deputies, irons clinking as they cuffed Diego and the survivors. Hargrove slunk back, his empire cracked but not crumbled, muttering threats as he mounted his buggy and retreated. Elena handed the revolver to Elijah, her hands bloodied literally and figuratively. I shot my own brother. What does that make me? Elijah holstered it, his gaze respectful. Human. Flawed, but fighting for better. Abigail nodded sagely. Faith ain't about perfection, child. It's about grace in the grit. As the sun dipped, casting long shadows over Dust Haven, Elena pondered her path, the convent's serenity versus the frontier's harsh truths. She'd traded vows for action, piety for pragmatism, but perhaps true devotion lay in bridging both. Yet the story wasn't over. Whispers spread of Hargrove plotting retribution, and Diego's gang remnants vowing rescue. Elena, now unbound by chains or illusions, chose to stay, aiding Abigail in the store while learning the town's ways, ministering to the needy not from a pulpit, but with deeds that blended compassion and caution. Elijah lingered too, drawn by her resilience. Their conversations on porches delving into ethics. Does violence ever justify ends? Can one escape familial curses? These debates, rich with tension, mirrored life's ambiguities, challenging all who witnessed. But deeper revelations awaited. A letter arrived days later from a distant relative, unveiling more about their parents' past secrets that could either heal or ignite fresh conflicts. Elena, gun belt now a reluctant accessory, faced the envelope with trepidation. Knowing truth often came at a cost. The envelope's wax seal bore a faded crest, one Elena vaguely recalled from childhood trinkets as symbol of old Spanish land grants, hinting at inheritance long buried under layers of deceit. Inside, the parchment crackled, words penned in elegant script by an aunt she'd never known existed, Consuela Morales, residing in Santa Fe, claiming their father hadn't fled, but been framed by Hargrave's early machinations. In a land grab scheme, your brother sought justice blindly, the letter read, but the proof lies in deeds hidden in the old mission ruins north of town. Retrieve them, and Hargrove falls not by bullet, but by law. Elena's pulse quickened. This wasn't mere family lore, but a potential weapon against the tyrant who'd orchestrated her ordeal. Yet pursuing it meant delving back into danger, risking the fragile peace she'd forged. She confided in Elijah and Abigail over coffee in the store's back room, the air thick with the scent of fresh baked bread and gun oil. If this is true, it could end Hargrave's reign, she said, folding the letter. But at what price? More confrontation. Elijah leaned back, his chair creaking. Justice delayed is injustice prolonged. But rushing in blindfold, how good intentions pave roads to regret. Abigail, polishing her rifle, wait in. Child, you've already crossed bridges most fear to tread. Faith without works is dead, as the good book says. But works without wisdom? That's folly. The trio debated late into the night. Is uncovering buried truths an act of courage or hubris? Does exposing corruption redeem past sins, or merely perpetuate vendettas? Elena grappled with her evolving identity, no longer purely nun, nor fully gunslinger, but a hybrid forged in fire, questioning if God's plan included such moral gray areas. Dawn brought decision. They'd ride to the ruins, a day's journey through bandit-haunted canyons, mounting horses. Selena in practical skirts and boots, crucifix still at her neck, they set out. The landscape unfolding in rugged beauty, red rock mesas, sagebrush whispering in the wind, eagles circling overhead as if omens. En route, ambushes loomed. Hargrave's spies had intercepted whispers, dispatching riders to intercept. The first clash came at a narrow pass, 3 gunmen emerging from boulders, rifles cracking. Elijah spurred forward, drawing fire while Elena and Abigail dismounted for cover. Elena's shots were measured now, aimed to disarm rather than kill, only bullet shattering a rifle stock, another grazing a boot to send a man fleeing. Yield, she shouted, her voice echoing. No need for more blood. To surrendered. The third felled by Abigail's precise aim. Interrogating the captives revealed Hargrave's desperation, knew of the deeds, had built his empire on their forgery. He's coming himself, one spat, with a posse to bury you all. Pressing on, the ruins appeared at dusk, crumbling adobe walls of a forgotten mission, vines claiming what time hadn't eroded. Searching by lantern light, they unearthed a tin box in the altar's base, documents yellowed but intact, proving Hargrave's fraud. Triumph mingled with tension. Hoofbeats announced Hargrave's arrival, a dozen men strong, encircling the site. Hand it over, sister, Hargrove called from horseback, his scattergun leveled. Or join the ghosts here. The standoff intensified, Elena clutching the box, Elijah and Abigail back to back, outgunned but unbowed. Words flew like preludes to bullet. Hargrave justifying his empire as manifest destiny. Elena countering with appeals to higher law. This land wasn't yours to steal, she declared. Repent or face judgment. Hargrove laughed, but doubt flickered. His men, hearing the truths, wavered. In the climax, Elena tossed the box skyward as distraction. Elijah firing to cover her dive. Abigail picking off threats. Hargrove charged, but Elena's shot bucked his horse, unseating him. Disarmed and bound, Hargrove faced defeat as the marshal tipped off by a dispatched Ritter to arrest him. The deeds secured justice, lands returned, victims compensated. Elena, wounds bandaged, reflected on the journey's cost, lives spared where possible. But the toll on her soul. Did I honor my vows? She asked Elijah under starlit skies. You honored life, he replied. That's the truest faith. Back in Dust Haven, Elena established a shelter, blending ministry with marksmanship, lessons for the vulnerable imploring, without endorsing vengeance. Diego, in prison, received her letters, seeds of redemption planted. Debates lingered in saloons. When does self-defense become aggression? Can faith coexist with force? These questions, woven into the town's fabric, ensured the tale's endurance. But one final twist awaited: Diego's escape attempt, forcing Elena to confront him anew, testing her principles to the core. News of Diego's breakout reached Dust Haven via telegram, guards overpowered, allies from his old gang facilitating flight. He was headed their way, driven by a mix of resentment and twisted loyalty. Elena stood on the store porch, wind whipping her hair, the crucifix heavy against her chest. He won't stop, she murmured to Elijah. Not until he drags me back or dies trying. Elijah checked his loads. Then we meet him on our terms, show him there's another path. Abigail, ever pragmatic, rallied townsfolk, miners, ranchers. Widows would suffered under Hargrove and outlaws alike, forming a loose militia. This ain't just your fight, dear. It's for all who've lost to lawlessness. As riders approached under a thunderous sky, Elena rode out to parley, alone at first, her revolver holstered but ready. Diego emerged from the dust, flanked by 5 hardened men. His thigh wound bandaged but his spirit unbroken. Katie, last chance. Join us, we're taking back what's ours now that Hargrove's gone. The confrontation peaked, Elena pleading for surrender, Diego arguing survival demands dominance. The world's unjust, fight fire with fire, he roared. Or burn trying, she countered. When guns drew, Elena's speed honed by necessity disarmed Diego again, her bullet creasing his arm. His men faltered as townsfolk appeared, overwhelming them without massacre. Diego, captured once more, finally broke. You win, sister. Maybe your way's stronger. Sentenced fairly, Diego found reform in labor. Elena visited, bridging divides. Her story became legend, a woman who questioned faith through fire, emerging resolute. In Dust Haven, peace bloomed, debates on violence fostering community. The telegram's ink was still fresh when Elena read it aloud to Elijah and Abigail in the dim light of the feed store's back room, the scent of hay and leather mingling with the tension in the air. Diego Morales escaped territorial prison last night, guards subdued to dead, believed heading south toward Dust Haven with remnants of his gang, armed and dangerous. Reward increased to 5,000. Elena set the paper down, her fingers steady despite the storm brewing inside. The crucifix at her neck felt like an anchor now, not just a symbol of faith but a reminder of the choices that had led her here, from auction block to avenger, from nun to guardian of a town she'd come to call home. Elijah paced the creaking floorboards, his boots leaving faint prints in the dust. He's not coming for redemption this time. That breakout smells of desperation, probably figures with Hargrove locked up. He can carve out his own piece of the territory. Abigail, seated at the scarred oak table, loaded shells into her Henry repeater with methodical clicks. Boy's always been a wildfire, burning everything in his path. But you've changed the game, Elena. Folks here see you as more than a former sister. You're the one who stood against tyrants without becoming one. The praise sat uneasily with Elena. In the months since Hargrove's fall, she'd transformed the store into a haven, teaching reading to minors' children by day, offering counsel to widows haunted by loss, and yes, instructing the willing in basic self-defense, how to handle a rifle without letting it handle you. But the gun at her hip was a constant whisper. Had she traded one form of bondage for another? The moral quandary gnawed at her during sleepless nights. Violence had saved lives, including her own, but at what cost to her soul? The convent's teachings echoed, turn the other cheek. Yet the frontier demanded an eye for an eye to survive injustice. Elena had debated this endlessly with Elijah on evening walks along the arroyo, where cottonwoods rustled like pages of an unwritten Bible. "Does defending the weak make me a hypocrite?" she'd ask, staring at the stars. Elijah, his voice gravelly from years of trail dust, would reply, "Hypocrisy's hiding from the fight. You're facing it head-on, questioning every step. That's more holy than blind obedience." Their discussions delved deep. Is injustice a test from above or a call to action? Can one wield force justly without corruption seeping in? These weren't abstract philosophies. They were lifelines in a land where sheriffs could be bought and judges swayed by silver. Word of Diego's approach spread like prairie fire through Dust Haven. Saloon patrons swapped tales of his exploitagico heists that left drivers penniless but alive. A code of honor twisted by rage. Some sympathized. Man's fighting the same system that broke his family. Others condemned. He's no better than the wolves he runs with. Elena organized a town meeting in the old chapel, its walls still bearing scorch marks from a long-ago raid. Standing at the pulpit in simple calico dress and boots, she addressed the gathered crowd, ranchers with calloused hands, merchants in starched collars, women clutching shawls against the chill. "My brother's coming, and he brings death, but we don't have to meet him with the same. Stand ready, but aim for life over vengeance." The assembly buzzed with debate, voices rising in heated exchanges that mirrored Elena's internal turmoil. A grizzled prospector argued, "Eye for an eye's the only language outlaws understand. Anything less invites more bloodshed." A schoolmarm countered, "And where does that end? With empty streets and graves?" Justice tempered with mercy builds communities, not ruins. Elena listened, her presence a catalyst for reflection on broader themes. In a world rife with inequality and barons hoarding water rights, while farmers starvetted violence equalize or perpetuate. The meeting ended with a plan, scouts on the ridges, barricades at town edges, and Elena as the voice of reason, hoping to parley before bullets flew. As dawn painted the mesas gold, riders crested the horizonts strong, including Diego, their dust cloud a harbinger. Elena rode out alone on her bay mare, the revolver holstered but chambered, wind tugging at her hair like insistent memories. The gang halted at the town's outskirts, Diego dismounting with a limp from old wounds, his face gaunt but eyes fierce. "Katie," he called, voice carrying over the sagebrush. "Heard you've become the law around here. Fitting, after you put me away." His men fanned out, rifles casual but ready, their faces weathered maps of hard living scars from bar fights, tattoos of faded loyalties. Elena reined in 20 paces away, her mount snorting softly. "I'm no lawman, Diego. Just someone tired of cycles that destroy. Turn back, there's a life beyond running." He laughed, but it lacked mirth, more a rattle of bones. "Life. Prison showed me the real chains, rich men pulling strings, poor ones dangling. Hargrave's gone, but his kind multiply. I'm taking what's due, supplies, horses, and you, if you'll see sense." The standoff crackled with potential violence, Elena's heart aching for the boy who'd once shared stolen apples under starlight. Yet she saw the man he'd become, a product of injustice, yes, but one who'd chosen to amplify it. Ma wouldn't want this. She dreamed of us free from past shadows, not deepening them. Diego's second in command, a burly man named Cortez with a notched ear, growled, "Enough talk, boss. Town's ripe, let's take it." But Diego held up a hand, stepping closer. "You shot me twice, sister. For what? Some ideal of peace in a war zone? The world's unjust railroads steal land from natives, banks foreclose on widows. Fighting back's the only justice." Elena's response was measured, drawing from her fused worlds of faith and frontier. Fighting back doesn't mean becoming the oppressor. I've seen mercy work. Hargrove fell to truth, not just guns. Join us, help build instead of burn. The debate intensified, voices echoing across the plain, challenging listeners and perhaps viewers of this tale to ponder. When systemic wrongs crush the vulnerable, is armed resistance righteous, or does it breed more chaos? Tension snapped when Cortez drew, his rifle swinging up. Elena's instincts flared her draw swift, bullet clipping his shoulder and sending him reeling. The gang opened fire, lead whistling as Elena wheeled her horse toward cover. A boulder cluster nearby, Elijah and townsfolk emerged from hidden positions. Their volley disciplined, aimed low to wound mounts or disarm, not slaughter. Abigail's repeater sang, dropping a rider's hat and forcing retreat. Diego charged, firing wildly, his shots chewing dirt near Elena. "Traitor," he bellowed. She returned fire sparingly, grazing his sleeve. "Brother, stop. This ends in graves." The battle raged under gathering clouds, thunder rumbling like divine disapproval. A young ranch hand fell wounded, his cry piercing Elena's resolve, another life scarred by her family's curse. She maneuvered through the fray, reaching Diego as he reloaded behind a fallen log. "Look around, your men are falling, not rising. Is this the legacy you want?" He paused, blood trickling from a fresh cut. Without cracking his facade for the first time. "What legacy? Pa left us nothing but hate." Elena extended a hand, revolver lowered. "Then let's forge a new one. Surrender, face trial fairly. I'll stand by you, help you heal." Gunfire dwindled as gang members, seeing their leader waver, threw down arms one by one. Hands raised. Elijah approached warily, irons ready, while Abigail tended the injured. Diego dropped his peacemaker, shoulders slumping. "You win again, Katie. Maybe your God's got a plan after all." The marshal arrived post-haste, cuffs clicking. But Elena advocated leniency. "He's my kin, give him a chance at reform. Labor on a ranch instead of chains." The lawman, respecting her role in Hargreaves' downfall, agreed to a reduced sentence with parole conditions. In the aftermath, Dust Haven healed, wounds bandaged, debates continuing in saloons over whiskey and coffee. Elena visited Diego at the work farm, their talks evolving from accusation to understanding, share stories of their mother, pondering if injustice could be combated without fists. "Violence solves moments," she'd say, "but compassion endures eras." Diego, calluses forming from honest toil, began to agree, even aiding in exposing remnant corruption from Hargreaves' network. Elena's path solidified. She married Elijah in a simple ceremony under the chapel's restored roof, their union a blend of grit and grace. Together, they expanded the shelter, advocating for fair laws in territorial assemblies, pushing for land reforms, protections for the poor. Abigail, their steadfast ally, lived to see grandchildren, her tales inspiring youth. The town prospered, a beacon against the West's wilds, proving that faith, questioned and tested, could coexist with strength. Years later, as Elena sat on her porch, gray streaking her hair, watching sunsets paint the horizon, she reflected on her journey from chained captive to liberated force. The wooden cross still hung at her neck, a testament that true salvation lay not in perfection, but in choosing light amid darkness. Dust Haven's legend endured, a woman who made others question their own faiths, their capacities for change. And so the story concludes, not with flawless heroes, but with real souls who rose above their scars, forging justice from injustice's ashes. If this tale of frontier trials has stirred something in you, share your thoughts in the comments below, especially on the themes of violence and injustice in life. Do you believe force is ever justified against systemic wrongs? Or does mercy always pave a better path? Take a stand, express your views. Your perspective might spark the next great debate.